Anthropic has introduced free premium Claude access for verified US K-12 educators. On its face, that's a notable benefit. But the most interesting part of the announcement may not be the price at all. Along with that free access, Anthropic also introduced teaching resources for those educators. And once you put those two pieces together, the question changes. If this were only about free access, we could describe it pretty simply. An eligible teacher gets a premium AI tool without having to pay for it. But the teaching resources add a second layer. They suggest that Anthropic is paying attention not only to whether educators can open Claude, but also to how those educators might use it in a teaching context once they're inside. So, is this merely a useful perk for teachers? Or are we looking at the beginning of a broader education strategy? The evidence does support a strategic interpretation, but we need to keep a very clear line between what Anthropic actually announced and what we're inferring from that announcement. First, let's set the boundaries, because the wording matters here. The announced offer applies to verified educators. More specifically, the supplied finding identifies the eligible group as US K-12 educators. Every part of that description is important. Verified US K-12 and educators. This isn't evidence of universal free premium access. It isn't a claim that students receive free Claude access. And it doesn't establish access for every person, organization, or institution connected to education. Verification creates an eligibility gate. Meanwhile, the US K-12 designation defines the particular group identified in the finding. That makes this a focused offer aimed at educators working within a specific national and educational context. The offer may be meaningful, but the evidence doesn't tell us how large it will become in practice. We don't have adoption numbers. We don't know how many eligible educators will participate. And we shouldn't take a clearly defined eligibility category and quietly turn it into a claim about widespread use. Now, think about the announcement as two connected components. The first is free premium Claude access. The second component is the set of teaching resources. Those resources matter analytically because they address a different question. Access answers, can an educator use the premium tool? Teaching resources begin to answer, how might an educator approach using the tool for teaching? Those aren't the same thing. Getting through the door is one issue. Understanding what you might do after you're through it is another. None of this proves what teachers will actually do with Claude, and it doesn't demonstrate any classroom impact. But it does support an interpretation about intent. Resources aimed specifically at teaching suggest an interest in how educators use Claude, not only in whether they can access it. So the strategic signal isn't really hidden inside either component on its own. It appears in the relationship between them. Provide the tool, and then provide material connected to applying that tool within an educator's professional setting. Why does that relationship matter? Because adoption usually takes more than simple availability. Someone can receive access to a tool and still be unsure about where it fits, how to get started, or whether it's relevant to the work they already do. Pairing access with guidance may lower more than one barrier at the same time. Free premium access may reduce the financial barrier. Teaching resources may reduce the practical or conceptual barrier involved in getting started. One piece makes the tool available. The other may help make that availability feel usable in a teaching context. That's why an educator adoption strategy is a plausible reading of the announcement. The focus on teachers is notable as well. Educators can shape how a tool is introduced and understood within K-12 education. Again, that's analysis, not a confirmed outcome. We can't say this offer has changed classroom practice. The supplied evidence doesn't support that claim. What we can say is that focusing on educators creates a possible route for Claude to be introduced through the people responsible for teaching, rather than through a claim that students are receiving direct access. This is where the evidence boundary becomes essential. The verified finding confirms two things: free premium Claude access and teaching resources for verified USK to 12 educators. Beyond those confirmed points, there's a lot we still don't know. The finding doesn't establish how long the program will last. It doesn't provide adoption numbers. It doesn't tell us how many eligible educators will use the offer, how frequently they'll use Claude, or whether the teaching resources will affect the decisions they make. We also have no verified classroom outcomes, no evidence of effectiveness, and no educator reactions in the supplied material. The finding doesn't establish free student access. It doesn't establish district partnerships or education department partnerships. And it doesn't establish a wider institutional roadmap. Most importantly, the evidence doesn't confirm that Anthropic has a comprehensive education strategy. Calling this a complete strategy would require more than the offer itself. We'd need evidence about its scope, execution, relationships, goals, and results. We don't have that evidence here, so the conclusion has to stop short of those claims. With those limits firmly in place, we can identify the strongest interpretation the evidence does support. Free access by itself could reasonably be treated as a promotional benefit. It gives an eligible group something valuable at no cost. But on its own, free access says relatively little about how the company expects that group to use the product. The teaching resources add direction. They connect access to the product with the professional activity of the people receiving it. That makes educator adoption the stronger strategic reading of the announcement. But notice how precise that conclusion needs to be. The offer suggests a strategy of pursuing adoption through educators. It doesn't prove that adoption has been successful. It doesn't prove any transformation in the classroom. And it doesn't reveal a complete plan for education. That's the key distinction. A strategic signal isn't the same thing as a demonstrated strategy operating at scale. The pairing gives us the signal. The supplied evidence doesn't give us the scale, the duration, the impact, or the broader institutional plan. Those missing pieces matter, especially if we're trying to distinguish an early strategic move from a comprehensive education strategy. So, was free premium Claude access the strategy? The best answer is not by itself. Anthropic offered verified USK 12 educators, both free premium Claude access and teaching resources. The access gets eligible teachers through the door. The resources suggest an ambition to influence how the tool is used once they're there. That combination makes the announcement look more strategic than a conventional discount or an isolated price promotion. It points toward adoption through educators because it brings together availability and teaching-oriented guidance. Still, the conclusion has to remain qualified. This is an interpretation of the announced offer. It isn't proof of the program's results, and it isn't confirmation of a comprehensive education strategy. We don't know the program's duration, its uptake, its classroom impact, its institutional reach, or its place within any wider roadmap. So the opening question resolves with a measured answer. Yes, the pairing looks like the beginning of an educator-focused adoption strategy. But the evidence stops well before proving that Anthropic has a complete education strategy. For more evidence-first analysis of AI, software, and open source, subscribe to Neural Stack. And if you see another interpretation of this announcement, share it in the comments.